Great. We have a few more joiners here. Okay, great. My name's David Joubert. I'm the Director of Product here at COHO. I'll be doing today's webinar session alone, demonstrating how rent collection works in COHO and how to do credit control, chasing up arrears. On a high level, there's really two ways to do the rent collection in COHO. On the one side, you're able to manually log payments, and on the other side, you can pull in your bank feed and use the bank transactions to create these payments, which is naturally less error prone and less manual. Without further ado, we'll share the screen. You should see in front of you the perfectly prepared properties account. And starting from the position that perhaps we have someone here that's joined for the first time, I'm actually going to create a new tenancy into an unoccupied property. Let's see if we can find one on this account. So that I can demonstrate how to create the rent schedule and the rent book. Alternatively, we'll just go ahead and end this existing tenancy, which does factor into the rent book. When you end a tenancy, you'll be given the chance to modify the rent book. It looks like this. In this example, we've got Derek's rent running all the way till his fixed term in June. Now let's imagine that he's terminating early at the end of November. We're going to set the tenancy end to November, and there are these two critical tick boxes, which is one to update the rent book, and the second one whether a pro rata calculation needs to be done. The pro rata calculation will be based on the rent day of the month that you've set. And let's say he's terminated early. It's tenant serve notice. So that's going to go ahead and update his rent book. And we can see here the items have been cut back to the 30th of November. Now that this property is marked as available, the new onboarding and new tenancy buttons are available for your usage at the top. We will add a new tenancy. We'll start this tenancy on the 1st of December. See the rooms available on the 1st, which is why it's been pre-filled. And we'll set this up as a 6 months fixed term tenancy, which means we get the option to mark the room as available from the day after the tenancy ends, which is perfect. And I'm actually going to set up a commercial tenancy. Let's imagine we have a commercial tenant in there and they're paying us 2,000 per month plus VAT, which is calculated there. And we'll actually set them up as a commercial. So this will be Derek's office. He's re-renting the property and using it as an office from home. We'll skip these other bits and we'll go ahead and add his tenancy. So for rent collection, you first need to set up your tenancy. You need to set up your rent book, which is done in the rent collection tab, or if you're doing an onboarding, it'll take you through the process. As we can see, this one has no rent schedule, so we'll go and create one. First of the month. What's new here is the payment terms. So in fact, because this is a commercial tenancy, we may have an arrangement that the rent is paid in arrears and not in advance. So we could put in here that this commercial rent has a 30-day payment term. And these payment terms impact the credit control and rent collection process with regards to whether rents are indicated as late or not. And we can see the rent schedule has been pre-generated for the 6-month period. We do have the opportunity to go ahead and edit items if we're not satisfied with what's been generated or there's a difference. And as well, you've got the tenancy reference, and there are two styles of payment references that are generatable, or alternatively, you could just make your own payment reference and ask the client to pay with that. I'm going to go ahead and create that. And here we have the rent schedule for this tenancy. Now, day to day with your tenants, they'll pay their rents. You need to log these on the platform. With Derek's account, I'm going to demonstrate a manual payment logging. Since it's an organization that's paid the rent, we're going to log a single payment. They're paying quarterly in advance, so that will leave us having to pay, is it 7,200? Is that right? And they will pay that on the day that their tenancy begins. They'll pay 3 months in advance. So what I've done there is logged a manual payment, and I've associated it with those specific charges. If you do make an error, you can remove these associations, or you can remove the payment altogether. What the system does not allow you to do is you cannot make certain changes on a charge when there is a payment associated with it. For example, you wouldn't be able to lower the rental amount to be less than the payment that's been assigned to the item. If you wanted to do that, you'd first need to remove the association. For those of you that create settlements with regards to your managed properties, once a charge is part of a settlement, you are also no longer able to edit that charge, nor would you be able to remove the payment linked to that charge. So it's quite important to keep your data accurate and up to date so that you don't end up in a situation where you want to go back 3 months and change a payment or a charge, but you can't because it's part of a settlement, which presumably means it's actually been paid out to the property owner via your disbursement process. Other bits to note here when you are on the tenancy level is that you can add rent dues at any time for any reason. You can also add other types of costs. For example, if there was an onboarding fee, which perhaps would be allowable because this is a commercial tenancy, we could add that and we could say it's due at the next rent, no problem, or we can choose a specific date and we can put in some notes here. And then we put in the amounts, obviously, and we can see the VAT number here was pre-filled because we know that the tenancy has VAT attached on the rent. And then once we've got that onboarding fee, that one's over there, nicely added. There's a shortcut for manually logging payments here, which essentially logs a payment for the exact same amount on the exact same date. That's again around manual payment login. And that's really as far as the rent book part of it goes. And I see there is a shortcut here to edit the monthly rent. This is to do with changing how much is charged on a month-to-month basis. And you would typically do that after the fixed term of a contract has come to an end, and you're doing a rent review and you're increasing the rent. We could, for example, say that we will be increasing the rent from the 1st of March. So we'll go and choose the 1st of March. The rent goes up to 2,200 plus VAT. And as we go through this form, we will actually see the new rent schedule from today's date moving forward. And we can see the items that are modified are only these 3 final items. We confirm that, we go ahead and make those changes. And now we can see that the rent's gone up to 2,200 plus VAT. Then if you wanted to use the bank feed, the place to add that is under the transactions item. So if I open the navigation here, we've got transactions. You have 2 options. You can either link your bank account, as is done on this demo account, or you can manually import transactions using a CSV file. Completely up to you. If the link is available for your bank, strongly recommend you link that and you go and add a friendly name for the account. Once you've got your bank account linked, those transactions will start pulling in into COHO. Only money in transactions are pulled in. Your expenses are not pulled in. So if you have any concerns about your staff members seeing those expenses, you need not be concerned. They will only see the money ins. And the system will go about making proposals like this blue proposal here with regards to which tenancy it believes the money should be reconciled against. On the left-hand side, we can see a payment's been made here with the reference day W Hall rent. This could potentially match either Warren Heather Hall or Wyatt Hall. And this is where you would typically have a problem in knowing whose rent this is, and you would probably not create a rule. In this circumstance, if you've been able to confirm outside of the platform that it is indeed Wyatt Hall, you can click this OK button here, and that will go ahead and reconcile the payment against his tenancy for the rent that's due on the 1st of October. We've got these three possible items. This is simply to cycle through which rent due, which I can demonstrate if we open up that tenancy and we go and have a look at the rent book. We can see that there's 4 months of rent that's due. Because this payment's landed on the 2nd of October, the system has mainly said it matches the 1st of October, but it's proposed that perhaps this is a payment in advance for November or December, etc., and it would also show unpaid arrears. Alternatively, these green items are rule-based transactions, rule-based matches for the transactions, and these are ones that I've created earlier. This is a proposal match, which means that it will never go ahead and make the match to the tenancy. It will always propose it here in this green style proposal, and you have a similar ability to toggle through. Notice that the rule-based match only proposes the most recent rent, and it's the AI proposal that's proposing the latter rents. If you wanted to change the type of matching, you could change it to youngest charge, which is, it's a little bit of a complex one. So youngest charge will look at the date, 2nd of October here, and it will then look for this date, 1 week backwards, 1 week forwards. Is there any rent due to reconcile against? So let's imagine that the tenant's rent is due on the 1st of October. Well, in this case, it's obviously 1 week backwards, and it's selected the correct rent. But if the rent day for this tenancy was the 10th of October, it's entirely possible that this payment could be for that rent the 10th of October and not the rent that is now overdue for the 10th of September. And that's what the youngest charge does. It looks at a week backwards, a week forwards, and then if it still hasn't found something, it works from the youngest aged receivable. So in other words, the most recently overdue rent. Oldest charge is much more straightforward. It's essentially the most aged receivable. It means that the oldest arrears will get matched first, and it's generally the style that you want. For most of your tenancies, the tenant will not have arrears, and oldest charge is perfectly acceptable. Finally, this orangey, yellowy color theme is to indicate where the software has detected that there is a payment on this person's account that matches the payment that's coming from the bank account, more or less. And in this example, we see that on the 2nd of September, we've received a payment, W Hall, but Mr. Wyatt Hall already has a reconciliation on his account for the 1st of September for the exact same amount. So there's a possibility that that amount is this money. And it's actually quite intelligent because it's only going to propose items that have been added manually by your team via the log payment button. It's not going to propose bank transaction items. And we can see here the manually logged item doesn't have the via bank transfer text. And so it's almost certainly that payment, although again, W Hall is not a very strong reference. It could entirely be Warren Heather Hall's rent, which as well for the 5th of September is an existing manually logged payment. A strong advisory from myself is that you don't mix and match how you do things. Either drive all of your payments from the bank transactions or manually log all of your payments. Obviously, the exception would be if you have payments that you've received in cash, then you could log those payments manually and you could mark those loggings as a cash payment received, because obviously that will never come in from the bank transaction feed. Finally, in this last example, we have another example of a proposed match, but it doesn't give us the OK button. And the reason is simply because C. Calder has paid £315, while the amount that she's liable to pay is 300. And the system is asking you to tell it where to associate the additional £15. So we'll see here, we can decide where to associate that money. And once you save that, it'll go ahead and save it. This table up here will only show proposed matches. If there's a transaction that the system can't make any sense of, it will not be shown there, and it'll be shown in this all transactions table. This is a good example. This is an intrabank transfer. It's not rent. It's got nothing to do with the tenants. And what you would typically do with this kind of payment is you would simply click the exclude button, which is a way of hiding it. And we can easily go and look at our excluded transactions by searching for them. I'm going to put it back so I have it available for future demonstrations. Alternatively, you could also look at all transactions and try to see more of your history. This is where you can see existing matches that you've made. And if you've made a match in error, you can either remove it from this side, or you could remove it from the rent book side on the tenant by going onto that payment and simply deleting it. In this example, we can see that the payment's already part of a settlement. So in fact, you can't touch it until such a time as you go ahead and delete that settlement. And this button will fail since there is a settlement against it. From the screen, you're also able to manually create rules and matches. So for example, let's say the system did not propose this. We could go and find Lesa Richardson. We choose the amount due to reconcile it against. And in this example, she doesn't have the additional money liable. And I'll show you what that looks like on her account in a second. And while we're here, we can create a match. So you have that option. I'm in fact not going to make a match. I'm going to go and save that payment. And let's go and find her account. So I'd like to demonstrate something that's quite important on the COHO platform, which is overpayments or unassigned payments. So in this case, we've got £900 paid by Lesa, but 450 of that we couldn't assign because there's nothing to assign it to. The rent book finalizes on the 31st of Jan, and that's because she's currently in a periodic tenancy and the rents get generated automatically. So what you can do in this instance is you can go and either manually create the charge for February. You'll see the rent amount's been filled in, the date due. That's all you need to add, and the system has made a good guess that you meant the payment to cover the whole month. We can see the start and end period, it's all filled in, and that it's been manually added by the user. Our system that creates the periodic rents will see that rent, and it will not create another one. But the only way that it knows not to create another one is because the date is for the 1st of February and the amount is exactly £450, which is the amount of the rent. So if you do generate items in advance, you need to make sure that it's the exact day and the exact amount. Otherwise, you may end up in a situation where the system creates another rent payable and the tenant's rent book is in arrears because of this, and you go and send them an email asking them to pay, and they're very confused and they respond back, possibly with a very snotty email telling you that they've paid their rent and they cannot believe you're so unprofessional. So that covers the bank transactions. There's a shortcut here to manually find a different tenancy if you want to, and also a shortcut to exclude this specific transaction or to exclude all transactions with the same reference. Now, remember, transactions that become excluded go into the exclusion list and they won't get reconciled in any way whatsoever. It could be convenient for your intrabank payments. Quick question, can I link multiple banks? Yes, you can link as many bank accounts as you would like. And yeah, that's it. That really concludes the process. You can see your rules that are created. You can archive rules, which means they will no longer run and they will no longer be part of the data set that runs, but you can always see them here under the archived. So I'm going to close that, and we can see here we've got some unreconciled transactions showing up in our dashboard. You will have a reasonable amount of numbers in these boxes if you're using the bank feeds. Very useful, and you can click on them and go straight to the appropriate panel. On your main page, if you click on the company logo, COHO logo, to go back to the main manage page, or if you click on this drop down and you click management dashboard, this will take you to your organization page, your main page. From here, you can open up rent collection and see the rent collection across your entire organization. It groups the overdue rents by property, you see here, which is somewhat useful. I prefer by tenancy. And this gives you a different view on the data. So you can see how arrears have grown. And it's interesting to note that this is by default only showing overdue amounts. If you wanted to see also not overdue amounts, you have to turn off the grouping and change the filter to all status types. That will update this table to pull in all the status types for the specific date range. So now that I've selected the 1st of November to the 6th of November, it basically shows me all the rents for this period. And we can see this one's paid and hence £0 due, the total rent overdue. That's useful really for reporting if you wanted to do month-to-month comparisons, or you wanted to say, okay, up to let's say from the beginning of this year until the end of last month, what's our total overdue rents? And see this pagination here, so probably the overdue amounts are on the second page. You can open these up and you can view some of them. There is a send reminder button here, and it may seem like a convenient place to send a reminder for the rent due, but I want to show you a better way. That reminder is for a specific rent item, but usually when you do debt collection, you're doing it across your entire tenancy, and you want to ask them to pay the rent for the entire tenancy. So if you go to the top of the rent collection panel and you collapse that down, you will see that the rent collection has three parts to it. It's got the credit control day-to-day tenancy arrears panel, which we will become very familiar with. And this is where you are able to see who owes you money. And it's got the escalation policy, which feeds into the panel above. Now, if you are on a fresh account and you don't have an escalation policy, first thing I'd like you to do is you click on this I icon over here, this help me make a policy, and there's a big blue button. If you click that, it's going to go ahead and create this escalation policy, which is one that John and I here at COHO have put together based on feedback from the industry and my own experience managing a massive portfolio. What this policy is it's an escalation of emails and manager steps that you would take to stay on top of arrears. For example, you will have a standard 2-day late email, and this is an example with fake data. So you can see what this email would look like. This is a very friendly reminder. We'd be grateful if you check that the payments left your account, etc. They're 2 days late. They may have actually paid, and the bank is 1 day late, and your team hasn't reconciled, or something. So let's keep those early emails quite polite. The 5 days late, almost certainly they haven't paid. So this is where we start getting into a bit more threatening language. This might affect your credit score. You know, the balance that is outstanding is X, and get in touch with us, etc. Finally, this one is different. It's not an email. I'm going to actually click edit to show you what that means. So manual is a manual step that you need to do yourself. This was built before we had the SMS within the platform. And so you can see it's still proposing that you manually send an SMS or a WhatsApp. But this is about, it's 6 days late. Let's take it to another communication medium. The tenant is clearly not responding to email. So you may want to give them a phone call, an SMS, a WhatsApp, etc. And so the escalation policy script goes on. Day 12 is a good day for a formal letter. And my personal recommendation would be hand delivering the letter under their bedroom door if it's an HMO, or if it's a house, go and ring the bell and hand them the letter. This serves two purposes, more relevant for HMOs than for single lets. You want to confirm whether the occupant is still occupying the unit. We have seen cases where tenants simply abscond from the rooms. They simply leave and they don't even tell you. So that can happen. So it's a good idea around 10 days late to just make sure that they still need the room. And obviously at 1 month of arrears, you want to start doing the Section 8 for monthly. So that would be 1 month, more than 1 month of arrears based on their current monthly rent amount. So in other words, they would be 1 month and 1 day late, and hence the next billing in advance is due, and they would henceforth be 2 months late, which allows you to do your Section 8 with the, I believe it's 2 weeks notice. And touch wood that they respect the Section 8 and vacate. Okay, so that's the policy. You customize that as well as you'd like. And then this is where you would work day to day to execute the policy. So the software will pull in all tenancies with arrears. You can change that if you'd like to. And it will already tell you which tenancies have an action recently, which tenancies have a step. Very interesting here. Warren doesn't have a step. He's only 1 day late. And then hence there's no escalation step. It's exactly what we would expect. Angela over here, we can see is more than 5 days late. And so we can go ahead and send that email, or maybe we want to send the 2 days email, since we can see from the notes here on the right-hand side that we haven't actually sent her an email yet. We can go ahead and preview that email, or we can customize it. And the customization is really powerful because the mail merge tags have already been injected into this email. And this gives us an opportunity to perhaps go and look exactly at her items 5 days late, and we can say, this is your reminder. And maybe we'll just add a new section here. You are 5 days late. 2 exclamation marks, not 3 and not 1. And we go ahead and send that email. And we can see here the page says we've modified this step. We can just reload the data. And what I want to draw your attention to is the note on the right-hand side. This is critical for your team to know what actions have been taken, and also for evictions. You are able to manually add notes, which is really beneficial. You can add something like, Angela sent me a WhatsApp confirming she will pay before the 8th of November 2024. And so just some advice there. Generally, rather saying she will pay in 2 days' time, get the customers to commit to an exact date. Always get them to commit to a date. It's very easy for people to say, oh, I'll pay you in 2 days, and then the money never shows up. Okay. And we can see here that she's been last action today. Now, what's very interesting is if you work around this panel and you come back, you obviously don't want to send tenants multiple emails on the same day. So you can just tick that little radio button there to exclude anyone that you've already messaged today. And of course, doing this tenancy by tenancy will be very tedious. I'm going to go ahead and show you this button over here. Select all, select none, or cherry pick. And you can click this button to execute the proposed step. This is going to go ahead and simply run those steps. And what's really nice here is if we go ahead and open this, we can see that the 5-day late email has been sent, and that's likely the case for all of them. If we reload the data, clicking here, suddenly those items are no longer in the table since I've excluded them. Now, this panel has a trick up its sleeve, and it's something that is a little bit hidden, so it's why I want to show it. If you open up the escalation policy, you can add a template that doesn't have a criteria. No criteria. So this is a manual only, hence there's no criteria. And this is an opportunity for you to create a custom email that you only send manually. I've created one earlier called Your Rent is Now Due. We can have a look at what that would look like. It's just a very basic, your rent is becoming due at the start of the next month. Okay. And so in my organization, all the rents are payable on the first of the month. So perhaps anywhere between the 28th to the 31st, I'll come in here and I will change this drop down to due in the next 1 to 5 days. On this data set, it's not showing me any records because none of the tenancies are due, have rents due between the 6th and the 14th of November. So let's pretend, or let's do the due in the past 1 to 5 days. Okay, fine. Let's pretend that this is the data set I wanted. From here, you can simply select all of them and manually choose that bulk email to send. And that's a great way to inform your tenants or remind them a few days in advance that the rent's due. Alternatively, when you have this panel open and you've got tenants that are in the credit, they will actually show up with a green amount due in brackets to indicate that they're in a credit. And what you could do is you could select all your tenants, but then exclude those tenants who are in credit, because obviously there's no need to send them a reminder email. First question, and it's probably in the chat, is why don't we automate this and just send them out every morning? Well, there's really two good reasons. Firstly, what happens if we send out a bunch of reminder emails, but these transactions have not been reconciled? Well, what happens is Gordon Walker is disappointed because he has a chaser email for rent that he's already paid. And so we've left that as a one-click. It's just one click, but you still have to do it yourself and kick off that process. Now you can also do a few things here on the main rent collection panel that are interesting. You can generate rent statements. You can export the data that you see here, and that can be useful for importing into an accounting system, although there's a better, different place to do that under finances. You can log a payment if you're doing manual payment logging. It's just a quick, convenient way to log a payment. And the import rent CSV is really if you're using another system to track rent collection and you want to get those pre-reconciled payments into this system. That's what this is for. It's very unlikely that you will need it, but if you do need it, there is a CSV format which you can download, and it's pre-filled with the unique tenancy identifiers, which is a very convenient way for you to have your own Excel spreadsheet with a list of all your tenancies with the unique identifiers. And all you need to go and do is put in the date and the payment amount and come here and use this import. Then that will go and add those payments directly onto their rent books. A very good use case for this is a client rents out 20 rooms to the local council. It's all housing allowance. The council sends him one bulk payment, so he can't reconcile that from the transactions panel. He either has to manually log all 20 payments, or he has a CSV that the council email to him when they make the payment. They send him a PDF file with the breakdown and they send him a CSV. So what he does is he takes that CSV and he massages the data into our import CSV format. He uses that import functionality and it saves him a lot of frustration. But most importantly, in this industry and in this game, it reduces the possibility of human error. And with that, I'm quickly going to have a little glance at my notes to see whether I have covered everything I wanted to cover. And it does seem very much so. Yes. Credit control notes are also accessible from the tenancy page. If you go into occupancy on the main panel, you can see all of your current occupants in the portfolio. You can go ahead and open any of those tenancies, and you are able to access under rent collection the credit control notes for that specific tenancy. It's the same credit control notes we saw on the main rent collection page. Is here when we did the credit control tenancy arrears panel. You can see here you've got the credit control notes at the bottom. Great way to keep it all in one place for your team. And also here, you've got the notes on the right-hand side. And of course, as well, you can import the rents here. It's the same import functionality. You can generate a statement, which is sometimes useful for showing the tenant if they ask for one. If you're catching up a bunch of tenancies that you know everything's paid, maybe it's legacy data, the mark all paid button is useful. And there is another aspect that's very important with regards to onboardings. When you onboard a tenancy, there's also the financial item that comes into that. And if you are logging payments from your bank transactions, there are two steps, the move-in money step and the holding deposit money step, which are very important steps to not manually create the payment if your payments are being driven by the bank. So for example, if we, do I have any onboardings here? Yes, I do have one waiting for the holding deposit to be paid. So I'm going to show you this form. When you confirm that you've received the holding deposit, you have the opportunity to log the payment. And what this means is if this tick box is ticked, it will actually go and create that payment on the rent schedule. This is probably not what you want to do if you're reconciling payments from the bank transactions. I recommend that you don't do it that way because it's entirely possible to accidentally both create the payment from this and then later perhaps another staff member creates the payment when it comes into the transactions with the bank transactions. Of course, as I demonstrated, we do have that AI thing that might tell you that it's an existing payment. It depends on whether you have a rule set up or not. So this will typically not be ticked if you have any active bank connections. So if you have a bank connection set up, this is unticked by default, and you can just go ahead and confirm the receipt. And the same applies to the move-in monies. It's the same process if you go and confirm that receipt. So those two bits definitely do impact. And I will be opening up to questions. More or less, I've covered everything. Okay, I've got two questions in the chat that are just bots. So perhaps we can open up to the floor. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to either type them in the chat or unmute your mic and let me know. Okay, seems like we have no questions, which either means my mic hasn't been working for 40 minutes or it's been answered quite well. The AI notes are not mine. I will have to ask our clients there whether one of them can share the notes. Of course, nothing stops me from running the video through an AI note generator afterwards. The video is going to be available along with all of our other videos as part of the YouTube channel. However, a really great place to go is onto coho.life / I think it is support, which has 3 items at the top. We've got the training resources, the online or on-site training, which is a new thing that we're offering, or the FAQs. The FAQs are a little bit empty, but the training resources shows you the product guide, which is something we've released in the last week, and it's something that Claire's been handling for quite a while, and she's taken a lot of time to build that out. So if you wanted to go and view the product guide, I'd really appreciate that. We'd love some feedback. Give it a moment to load. It takes a bit of time, but it's got absolutely everything in there, absolutely everything for the site that the tool does as of today, except I don't believe it covers the Zero integration, which we will cover in next week's webinar. Alternatively, on our YouTube channel, there are the videos. And if you go to videos, latest, you'll see the latest. We can see there's a 2 minute and 30 seconds credit control demo there. Okay. Well, if we don't have any further questions on this specific topic, sorry, did I go too fast? Yes, I might have. I have an important call in 15 minutes, and I did try to go fast and cover as much as I can. What you could do is you could watch it in your own time at your own leisure. I believe YouTube offers a 0.75 or 0.5 playback rate in addition to playing at double speed or 1.5 times speed. Do feel free to watch it again. Please chat to us in Discord if you have questions. Great resources there. Any suggestions or recommendations, throw it in there. Obviously, we have on our roadmap, we've got planned out all the immediately obvious stuff. Yes, we want to bring SMSs into it. Yes, we want to do this. Yes, we want to do that. But if there's something that you think is quite novel, then yeah, we'd love to hear about it. Well, thank you very much for coming, and I wish you all a fantastic afternoon and a great soon to come weekend. With this, I would say goodbye, au revoir, and auf Wiedersehen.